Hi everyone, welcome back to Java for All. In this video, we are going to start talking about serialization. Basically, serialization is persisting the object you have in hands in a way that even if you wipe it from your memory, you are able to get it back. So in our case here, we are going to serialize the object to a file. We are going to get that object that we have in memory, and then through an array of bytes, we are going to store it in a file, and then we will be able to read that file and get the state of the object back. Now, how can we do that? Let's first create a new package. Let's call it X serialization dot let's call it first domain, because we are going to create here student, and we are going to give some values. For example, long ID, name, string, and string password. Yep. Let's create a constructor with all attributes, and then out insert, getters and setters, everything again, and again out insert to string. Now, what are we going to do? Create a new package. Let's call it test. Now, inside this test, create another class, serialization test 01 PSVM, and let's first create our student. Student, be careful, the package we are working is X serialization. Student, new student. Well, I will add myself here, so ID 1, name -20, and password. Now, serializing is basically using some kind of string of data to save the object in a file. And I didn't show this picture before, but all the rights to this website. This is how basically it looks like. You have input string and output string. Input string is when you are reading, so basically you are getting from a file or an array, and output is usually when you are storing, you are sending somewhere. And as you can see, things are very cohesive, and we are going to use this cohesion to save an object into a file. So basically, we are going to use output string, object output string, but we want to save that object into a file. So we are going to have to use object output string and file output string. So basically, this is what we have to do. First, create a method, private, static, void serialize, and we're going to get here student, and we will need object output string. Since we are working with output string, the chances that we will have to close it are pretty high. So object output string, I will call OOS, and new object output string. From our zip, we know if we were working with output string, we will need, if we want to send to a file, of course, the file files.new output string. So basically we need to create here paths.get, and let's see where we are going to save. So let's get rid of all these tests and subfolders. Just nuke everything, and now we are going to use folder, and I will call student, and the extension I can give anything. I will just give ser from serialization. Now files.new output string and my path that I didn't create here, path. catch IO exception, and always do something with that exception. Okay, now basically what you have to do, object output string dot write object, and you just pass the object you have, the student. Now we are going to execute and we will get an exception, or we were supposed to get an exception. Let's call, otherwise we will not get an exception. Now we will get the exception. So basically in Java, you have to tell when your object can be serialized. You have to tell this object is serializable. It means that it passes and is a test. So if you go back to student, implement serializable. So I'm passing the test is serializable because I'm implementing the interface serializable. If you open this interface, basically it's just what we call a flag interface. A flag interface is an interface that basically there's no method and is used for exactly this purpose. Pass in the test is a something. Now that student is serializable, our serialize method, our object output string, will be able to serialize into a file. You can see no exceptions, and if we go all the way up, we have our student.ser. So basically, when you open, this is just IntelliJ trying to deserialize the array of bytes. And you can see it's pretty ugly because it doesn't matter for us. The one responsible for understanding this is the JVM. And now that you know how to serialize, we are going to deserialize. So basically, you copy this method. And to deserialize, we don't need a student because the student is already in the file. And now that instead of outputting something, we are input something. So object input string, object input string, new object input string, and files new input string. Instead of writing, we want to read that object, read object, and this is going to return. First we have to add another exception, class not found exception, because this is going to return object. Why? Because the input string doesn't know what kind of object I'm reading. Technically, you as a developer, you know. So instead of getting the object here, you can student, you can cast to student. Now we're just going to sort student. So before I execute, I will remove the serialize because I don't want to save again, and I will leave this student here. So Control Shift F10, deserialize. So we have the student back. That student is not the same as this one. I can remove this one or change the name, and you will notice that we still get the same value. Basically, we are writing and we are reading from the same file. Now, why is serialize so important? Because there are some cases where, for example, you want to save the state of the object. Let's say that, for example, you want to store in a database or you want to store in a file the state of the object when you are doing some transaction and you want to read that later for some reason. This is the way you should do it. The thing is, serializing something, it's something that in Java they are trying to remove because most of the security vulnerabilities is related to the serialization process. So I'm not sure how it's going to be in the future, but there is a chance that they will remove this from the language at all. But so far, version 15, 16, and probably 17, it will still be there. I'm not sure is how long it's going to take because there are several frameworks using this and probably a lot of people as well. So it's something that it's going to be a major breaking change for the language. So before we finish this, there is something very important that you need to understand. When you are deserializing, when you are reading back the content of a file or whatever you stored that object, wherever you serialized, the constructor is not executed. So you do not create the object again. For example, if you add here constructor, and if I go back to my serialization test, if I remove this, you will see that the student, when you are creating, of course, the constructor is executed. But let's remove this and just deserialize the object. Ctrl Shift F10. And as you can see, the constructor is not triggered. Now, why is this important? Because especially in cases where you are working with inheritance, and remember, if you are not familiar with the constructor process, please take a look at the videos that we talk about constructor, because as you probably noticed, we have in the constructor always the call, for example, to super. So if you are talking about inheritance, we have at some point in time calls to the super, that is the superclass constructor. So this will affect the way you are serializing your object. But for this video, you just have to understand that serializing an object means that you are persisting that object. It means that even if you reboot your computer and you go back and you open again, you will be able to get the state of that object the exactly same way it is. And well, the process to serialize and deserialize is using object output string and object input string. So let's continue with more content in the next video. See you. Bye bye.